Imagine being 7 months pregnant and discovering the man you married not only has a mistress, but also a secret plan to erase you and your babies from his fortune. What if the family you thought was protecting you was actually covering up the mysterious disappearances of every wife before you? This isn't just betrayal. This is power, corruption, and a fight for survival where every twist will leave you asking, who can she really trust? Stay with me until the end, because the final twist will shock you. And if you love stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice served cold, make sure to like, drop a comment, share with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The fertility clinic smelled like hope and hand sanitizer. Elizabeth Sterling pressed her palm against her belly, feeling the flutter of movement beneath her designer maternity dress as Dr. Patricia Roberts pointed to the ultrasound screen. Both babies are developing beautifully, Dr. Roberts said, moving the wand across Elizabeth's 7-month bump. Twin A is here, twin B is here. Strong heartbeats, perfect positioning. Elizabeth's eyes welled with tears. After 3 years of IVF treatments, she had hidden from everyone, including James. She was finally going to be a mother. Twice over. The secret visits, the hormone injections she had administered alone in hotel bathrooms during supposed shopping trips, the crushing disappointments of failed cycles, all of it had led to this moment. Would you like photos? Dr. Roberts asked. Yes, please. Elizabeth clutched the glossy prints like winning lottery tickets. She had planned to surprise James tonight at their anniversary dinner. 5 years of marriage deserved something special. Her phone buzzed, a notification from her financial planning app, a reminder she had set years ago and forgotten about. She almost dismissed it, then froze. The words on the screen made her blood turn cold. Prenuptial agreement, expiration, tonight, 11:59 p.m. All separate property provisions void after 5 years. Elizabeth's hand trembled. How had she forgotten? More importantly, why hadn't James mentioned it? They had been discussing expanding their investment portfolio just last week. He had suggested putting everything in his name for tax purposes. The timing suddenly felt less like coincidence and more like calculation. Mrs. Sterling, is everything all right? Dr. Roberts' voice seemed to come from very far away. I need to go, Elizabeth managed. She grabbed her Hermes bag, the ultrasound photos crumpling slightly in her grip. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. The November air hit her face as she exited onto Madison Avenue. Her driver was waiting, but she waved him off. She needed to think. The prenup had been James's family lawyer's idea, standard Sterling family protocol. But the 5-year sunset clause had been James's suggestion, sold to her as a romantic gesture. By then we'll have children and none of this will matter, he had said. She tried calling James, straight to voicemail. His assistant Margaret picked up on the first ring. Sterling Enterprises, Margaret speaking. Margaret, it's Elizabeth. Is James in? Oh, Mrs. Sterling. Margaret's voice carried an odd tension. He's in a meeting with Miss Chase from the Singapore office. He specifically asked not to be disturbed. Victoria Chase, 28 years old, Harvard MBA, daughter of James's biggest investor. Elizabeth had met her at last month's charity gala. The woman had spent the evening finding excuses to touch James's arm, laugh at his jokes, lean in close to whisper observations about the other guests. I need to speak with him. It's urgent. I'm sorry, but he was very clear. Elizabeth hung up. The Sterling Enterprises building was 12 blocks away. She started walking, her Louboutins clicking against the concrete with metronomic precision. With each step, small details from the past months rearranged themselves into a new pattern. Late nights at the office, weekend trips to evaluate properties that James insisted she was too pregnant to attend, the new passwords on his devices for security compliance. The lobby of Sterling Enterprises was all marble and mirrors, designed to make visitors feel small. Elizabeth had helped choose the art on the walls, massive abstract pieces that James privately mocked but publicly praised as representing dynamic capital in motion. The security guard Thomas smiled at her. Evening, Mrs. Sterling, wasn't expecting you tonight. Spontaneous visit, she said, forcing brightness into her voice. The executive elevator required her thumbprint. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection. Pale face, dark circles under her eyes despite the concealer. the prominent bump that made her Chanel dress stretch in ways it was never designed to accommodate. The 40th floor was silent. Margaret's desk sat empty, her computer dark. The lights in James's corner office were on, the door slightly ajar. Elizabeth could hear voices, James's commanding baritone and a woman's lighter tones, punctuated by laughter. She approached on silent feet, a skill learned from years of navigating her mother's volatile moods. Through the crack in the door, she could see James's massive mahogany desk, the Rothko painting she had bought him for their first anniversary, the leather sofa where they had celebrated his first billion-dollar deal, the sofa where James was now sitting with Victoria Chase. Victoria's silk blouse was unbuttoned to the third button. James's hand rested on her thigh. They were looking at something on his laptop screen, their heads close together. "The Cayman accounts are ready," Victoria was saying. "Once the prenup expires tonight, you can initiate the divorce without any financial exposure. She gets standard alimony, nothing more." "The timing with her pregnancy is unfortunate," James replied, his tone as casual as if discussing a minor scheduling conflict. "But Helen says the custody arrangements are already drafted. Mental health concerns, isolation from family, inability to provide stable environment, the usual playbook." Helen, his mother, the Honorable Judge Helen Sterling, who had kissed Elizabeth's cheek at Thanksgiving and called her the daughter she never had. Victoria laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "Poor thing probably thinks those babies are her insurance policy." "They're my insurance policy," James corrected. "Heirs to continue the Sterling legacy." She was just the incubator. A pretty, pedigreed incubator, but replaceable nonetheless. Elizabeth's hand went to her stomach. The twins kicked as if sensing her distress. She bit her lip hard enough to taste blood, forcing herself not to make a sound. "Speaking of which," Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt, "we should celebrate the successful completion of Phase 1. She moved to straddle James's lap. 5 years of playing devoted husband must have been exhausting. "It had its moments," James said, pulling her down for a kiss that was hungry and practiced and nothing like the perfunctory pecks Elizabeth had received for the past year. Elizabeth backed away from the door, her heartbeat so loud she was certain they would hear it. Each breath came in short, sharp gasps that she forced herself to control. She couldn't fall apart. Not here. Not now. The ultrasound photos in her hand were crumpled beyond recognition. She let them fall into a wastebasket as she passed. Those babies in the images belonged to a different woman, one who still believed in fairy tales and wedding vows, and men who meant it when they said "until death do us part." The elevator descent felt endless. When the doors opened, Thomas looked up with concern. "Mrs. Sterling, are you feeling all right? You look—" "I'm fine," she lied, already moving toward the exit. "Just needed some air." Outside, Manhattan had transformed into a kaleidoscope of lights and shadows. Elizabeth's mind raced through the implications. The prenup expired at midnight. It was now 8:15, less than 4 hours to protect herself and her children. She hailed a cab, something she hadn't done in years. "Chase Manhattan Bank, please. The Fifth Avenue branch." The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "They close at 6, lady." "Private banking stays open until 10. The words came out sharper than intended. "I'm a priority client." During the ride, she pulled out her phone and started documenting. Screenshots of joint account balances, investment portfolios, the vacation home in the Hamptons, the art collection, everything that would become untouchable after midnight. At the bank, Richard Lowry, her private banker, was surprised to see her. "Mrs. Sterling, what brings you here so late?" "I need to make some transfers from our joint accounts," she said, placing her hand on the marble counter to stop it from shaking. "Significant transfers." Richard's expression shifted to professional concern. "Of course. May I ask the purpose? For transactions over a certain amount, we need—" "Investment diversification," she cut him off. "My husband asked me to handle it. Tonight." The lie came easily. Too easily. As Richard pulled up the accounts on his screen, his eyebrows rose. "You want to transfer $12 million? That's half of the liquid assets in our joint accounts," Elizabeth said. "I'm entitled to half." Technically, yes, but Richard's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and his face went pale. Excuse me one moment. He stepped away, but Elizabeth could see his reflection in the window behind his desk. His lips moved rapidly, then he nodded several times. When he returned, his demeanor had changed entirely. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling, but I've just been informed of a security hold on these accounts. Any significant transfers require both signatures. Since when? Since, he checked his screen, 45 minutes ago. Mr. Sterling called it in personally. The trap was already closing. James had probably started the moment she left the fertility clinic. He had been tracking her somehow. Of course he had. Elizabeth stood, her dignity the only currency she had left. Thank you for your time, Richard. She made it to the bathroom before the first sob escaped. In the harsh fluorescent light, she looked like a ghost. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled. She cleaned herself up as best she could, then stared at her reflection. Think, she whispered to herself. Think like he does. James always said the key to winning was controlling the board before your opponent knew the game had started. But he had made one miscalculation. He thought she would crumble, would come crying to him, would beg. He didn't know about the 3 years of IVF she had endured alone. He didn't know about the strength required to smile through hormone injections and failed cycles, and the crushing weight of hope deferred. Her phone rang, James. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Darling, where are you? Margaret said you stopped by the office, but I was in a meeting. I'm home now. Don't forget we have dinner reservations at Le Bernardin. Love you. The casual gaslighting, the easy lies. He was already crafting the narrative. Devoted husband, confused by his wife's erratic behavior. Elizabeth walked out of the bank and stood on the sidewalk, watching the city pulse around her. She had 3 hours and 14 minutes. Her credit cards were probably already canceled. She checked. Yes, all of them declined when she tested them at a nearby ATM. But there was one thing James didn't control, had never bothered to learn about because it seemed so insignificant compared to his fortune. Her grandmother's trust fund, $150,000 in an account under her maiden name, Elizabeth Morrison. Mad money, her grandmother had called it with a wink. Every woman needs running away money. She had never changed the account information, had never even mentioned it to James. It generated a modest return that she had automatically reinvested for 5 years. She pulled up the app on her phone, $173,000 and change. It wasn't much by Sterling standards, but it was hers. A text came through from an unknown number. She opened it to find a photo. Her mother entering a building. The sign read Wellness Psychiatric Center. The message below read, she seemed confused. We're helping her get the care she needs. They had taken her mother. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she tried calling her mother straight to voicemail. She tried the facility next. Wellness Psychiatric Center. How may I direct your call? My mother, Patricia Morrison, was just admitted. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't provide patient information over the phone. I'm her daughter, Elizabeth Morrison. She used her maiden name instinctively. Our records show Patricia Morrison's next of kin as James Sterling. He authorized her voluntary admission for a 72-hour evaluation. Only he can approve visitors or calls. The line went dead. Elizabeth stood in the middle of the sidewalk, pedestrians streaming around her like she was a stone in a river. Her mother, who had early-stage dementia but was still functional, was now locked away. Another piece removed from the board. She needed help. But who? Their social circle was James's social circle. Their lawyers were James's lawyers. Their friends were James's friends. Then she remembered Marcus. Marcus Webb had been everything James wasn't. Warm, genuine, terrible with money, but rich in integrity. They had been engaged 6 years ago before she met James at a gallery opening, before she had been dazzled by private jets and promises of a life without financial worry. Marcus had taken the breakup hard but with dignity. Last she heard, he worked for the FBI in financial crimes. She still had his number saved under M Gallery, a remnant from when she used to hide his contact from James's jealous scrutiny. Hello? His voice hadn't changed. Still that slight Texas drawl that emerged when he was tired. Marcus, it's Elizabeth, Liz. Silence. Then Liz? Jesus, it's been, what, 5 years? 6. Marcus, I need help. I can't explain everything over the phone, but are you hurt? Are you safe? The concern in his voice nearly broke her. I'm on East 53rd near Madison. I'm not hurt, but I'm not safe. Can we meet? Federal Plaza is 20 minutes away. Can you get here? I can't take a cab. He's tracking my cars as I say. There's a coffee shop on the corner of Worth and Broadway. Nancy's. I'll be there in 25 minutes. Elizabeth started walking. The November wind cut through her coat, but she barely felt it. Her phone buzzed constantly. James calling, texting, escalating from concerned to irritated to angry. Where are you? This is ridiculous, Elizabeth. You're making a scene. Think about the babies. Your mother is worried sick. That last one almost made her laugh. Her mother was probably sedated, convinced she was confused, being told that Elizabeth would visit tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Nancy's was a narrow space squeezed between a dry cleaner and a tax office. Marcus was already there, looking older but still fit, his FBI badge clipped to his belt. When he saw her, his expression shifted from curious to alarmed. Jesus, Liz, you look... He caught himself. Sit. Let me get you some water. She sat in a cracked vinyl booth while he brought water and a cup of tea. You're pregnant. 7 months. Twins. The words felt strange. She had just learned about the twins 3 hours ago, though she had suspected for weeks. Congratulations? He made it a question, reading her face. Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without judgment, without interrupting. Can you do that? He nodded. She told him everything. The prenup expiration, the scene in James's office, the bank freeze, her mother's imprisonment. As she spoke, Marcus's expression darkened. The prenup expires at midnight, he confirmed. 11:59 p.m., yes. Marcus pulled out a small notebook. And you have proof of the affair? I saw them together. I heard them discussing hiding assets. But no recordings, no photos. She shook her head. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Okay, first, your mother. False imprisonment is a federal crime, but if James convinced a doctor she needed evaluation, it gets complicated. Second, the financial manipulation. Moving assets offshore in anticipation of divorce is fraud, but proving intent is difficult. I don't have time for difficult, Marcus. I have 2 hours and 8 minutes. Right. He leaned back and she could see him switching into investigator mode. Here's what you need to do. First, drain the grandmother account immediately. Cash, multiple banks, small amounts. Second, get a new phone, prepaid, phone only. Third, disappear. Disappear? You can't fight him on his turf, Liz. You need to regroup, gather evidence, build a case, but right now you're exposed. He's already framing you as unstable. An erratic pregnant woman who disappeared will look worse than a strategic retreat. But my mother, I'll look into your mother, quietly. But Liz, if you go back now, if you confront him, you'll lose. He's counting on your emotional response. Don't give it to him. Elizabeth's phone rang. James again. She declined and noticed she had 3% battery left. There's something else, Marcus said, pulling out a different phone. This is a burner, but hidden in the medical alert bracelet is a recording device. High quality, uploads to a cloud server I control. Wear it always. She took the bracelet, a simple silver band with a medical caduceus symbol. Why do you have this? We use them for undercover work. Consider yourself undercover in your own life. Marcus, why are you helping me? He was quiet for a moment. Because 6 years ago, I watched you choose security over love. And I understood. But security without freedom isn't security at all. It's a golden cage. Her phone died mid-buzz. Go, Marcus said. There's an ATM across the street. Start there. I'll handle things on my end. Elizabeth stood, then paused. The babies. He'll come for the babies. Not if he can't find you. Marcus handed her a business card. Sarah Mitchell, she's a family lawyer who owes me a favor. She's not in James's pocket. Call her from the burner once you're safe. Elizabeth pulled $8,000 from 6 different ATMs, the maximum her grandmother's account would allow in a single day. Each transaction felt like a small act of war. She bought the cheapest prepaid phone she could find at a 24-hour pharmacy, along with hair dye, scissors, and basic medical supplies. The clock read 10:47 p.m. She checked into a budget motel in Queens using her maiden name and cash, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and barely looked at the ID she presented. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. At 11:58 p.m., she sat on the bed, watching the clock on the burner phone Marcus had given her. At midnight exactly, a text came through from James. The game has changed. Come home or things get worse. She didn't respond. Instead, she called Sarah Mitchell. Marcus said you'd call, Sarah answered without preamble, despite the late hour. Are you somewhere safe? For now. Good. Listen carefully. Tomorrow morning, James will file for divorce in New York. He'll claim abandonment, mental instability, and endangerment of the unborn children. I need to file first, tonight, in whatever jurisdiction you're in. I'm in Queens. Perfect. New York is actually better for you than Manhattan jurisdiction. I'm drafting now. I need you to record a statement. Time-stamped, clear, explaining why you left. Can you do that? Elizabeth looked at herself in the cracked motel mirror. Yes. Email it to me within the hour. And Elizabeth, don't tell anyone, not even Marcus, where you are specifically. The less people know, the safer you are. After recording her statement, calm, factual, devoid of the emotion threatening to consume her, Elizabeth finally allowed herself to cry. She sobbed for the life she had lost, the future she had imagined, the father her children would never know. Not the real James, anyway. They would only know the performance, the public persona, the lies she had married. Her phone rang at 6 a.m. Unknown number. Mrs. Sterling? The voice was male, professional. This is Detective Raymond Walsh, NYPD. Your husband has filed a missing person report. We're concerned for your welfare and the welfare of your unborn children. Can you tell us your location? The trap was elegant. If she refused, she looked guilty. If she complied, they'd escort her back to James. Detective Walsh, I'm safe. I've left my husband due to domestic circumstances I'm not comfortable discussing. I'm under medical supervision. The medical alert bracelet felt heavy on her wrist. Ma'am, Mr. Sterling is extremely concerned. He mentioned you have been struggling with paranoid episodes. Has he also mentioned the prenuptial agreement that expired at midnight last night, or that he was with Victoria Chase when I left? Silence. Then, ma'am, I need to confirm your safety in person. It's protocol. She hung up. Within minutes, her photo was on the morning news. Pregnant wife of billionaire James Sterling, missing, feared in crisis. The photo was from last year's Met Gala. She looked polished, perfect, empty. The motel room suddenly felt like a trap. She grabbed her meager supplies and left, keeping her head down. The city was waking up, commuters flooding the sidewalks. She disappeared among them, anonymous in her drugstore sunglasses and yesterday's clothes. At a public library, she used a computer to check her accounts. Everything was frozen. Even her grandmother's trust showed a whole pending investigation. James had been thorough, but she had the much, and more importantly, she had time. Every hour she stayed hidden was an hour his narrative weakened. She called Marcus from the burner. They're looking for you everywhere, he said without preamble. Private investigators, security firms, even some off-duty cops James has on payroll. Where are you? Moving, Marcus, my mother. Still at the facility, but I have a contact there. She's sedated but safe. I'm working on getting eyes on her. And James? Playing the concerned husband perfectly. He's given 3 interviews already. You're being painted as having pregnancy psychosis. Elizabeth laughed, bitter and sharp. Of course, the classic playbook. Liz, there's something else. Victoria Chase isn't who she seems. What do you mean? She's been under SEC investigation for insider trading at her last firm. Her father, Thomas Chase, he's not just James's biggest investor. He's been suspected of money laundering for years. The FBI has been watching them. Are you saying Victoria is... I'm saying she might be more vulnerable than James thinks. And vulnerable people make mistakes. 3 days into her disappearance, Elizabeth had developed a routine. Different motel each night, paid in cash. breakfast at chain restaurants where she was invisible, libraries during the day to research and communicate. She had dyed her hair dark brown, cut it short. In thrift store clothes and without makeup, she looked nothing like the sterling wife on the news. Sarah Mitchell had filed for divorce and a restraining order, but James's lawyers had already moved to have it dismissed based on Elizabeth's mental state. The legal battle was happening without her, papers filed by people she'd never meet in courtrooms she couldn't enter. On day 4, her burner rang. Sarah. I have news, good and bad. Bad first, Elizabeth said. James has gotten a judge to issue a welfare check order. If you're found, you'll be taken for psychiatric evaluation. His mother pulled strings. Judge Helen Sterling. Of course. The good? Victoria Chase wants to meet with you. Elizabeth nearly dropped the phone. What? She reached out through intermediaries. Says she has information you need. But Elizabeth, this could be a trap. Where does she want to meet? Public place, Bethesda Fountain in Central Park. Tomorrow noon. Everything in Elizabeth screamed danger. But she needed allies, or at least intelligence. I'll go. Elizabeth, I'll be careful. The next day, Elizabeth approached Bethesda Fountain like a spy in a Cold War novel. She circled the perimeter twice, looking for James's security team. The park was full of tourists, joggers, normal people living normal lives. Victoria sat on a bench, looking younger than her 28 years. She wore oversized sunglasses and a coat that probably cost more than most people's cars. Elizabeth sat down, keeping space between them. You look different, Victoria said. You look the same. Victoria laughed, brittle. I suppose I do, still playing the role. What role is that? The mistress, the other woman, the villain in your story. Victoria removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes red from crying. Except that's not the whole truth. I saw you with him. You saw what you were meant to see. Victoria pulled out a phone, showed Elizabeth a message thread. These are from my father. 2 years of him ordering me to get close to James to find evidence of his financial crimes. My father owns 40% of Sterling Enterprises. He suspected James was embezzling. Elizabeth read the messages, her world tilting again. You're saying you're what, undercover? I'm saying I'm trapped, just like you were. Victoria's voice cracked. My father is not a good man, Mrs. Sterling. But James is worse. He's killed before. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. His first wife, Amanda, the suicide, he staged it. And his father's heart attack? Induced. I have proof. Why should I trust you? Victoria handed her a flash drive. Because in 6 hours, James is going to have you committed. A judge, not his mother, signed the order based on testimony from 3 psychiatrists who've never met you. Once you're in, you won't get out until after the babies are born. And then what? Then you'll have an accident. Postpartum psychosis leading to tragic suicide. He's done it before. Elizabeth's hand went to her stomach. The twins moved, restless. There's a cottage, Victoria continued. In the Berkshires, off the grid, owned by a shell company my father doesn't know I control. You could hide there until the babies are born. I'll make sure James looks everywhere else. Why would you help me? Because when this is over, when James falls, and he will fall, I need someone credible to testify that I tried to do the right thing. My father is going to destroy me for failing him, unless I can prove I was gathering evidence for authorities. It was self-serving, but it was honest. Elizabeth appreciated the honesty. The flash drive, Victoria said, standing. Everything's on there, including recordings of James discussing your disposal. As Victoria walked away, she paused. He never loved either of us, you know. Men like James don't love, they acquire. The cottage in the Berkshires was a 2-hour drive from the city in a car Elizabeth bought with cash from a desperate seller on Craigslist. It sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by pine trees and silence. No neighbors for miles, no cell service except for one spot by the kitchen window. She had stopped at a Walmart on the way, buying supplies for what might be a long siege. Canned goods, prenatal vitamins, basic medical supplies, batteries, flashlights. The cashier had looked at her with concern, a very pregnant woman buying survival supplies, but said nothing. The flash drive Victoria had given her contained nightmares. Videos of James with various women over the years. financial documents showing money laundering through offshore accounts. But most damning was a recording from 2 years ago. James and his mother discussing Amanda's suicide. The medical examiner is handled, Helen Sterling's voice said calmly, but you need to be more careful in the future. There won't be a future issue, James replied. I've learned from the mistake. Marriage is not a mistake, darling. It's a tool. But tools can cut both ways if you're not careful. Elizabeth uploaded everything to the cloud server Marcus had given her access to. Then she made copies on multiple drives, hiding them around the cottage. For 3 weeks, she lived in isolation. Her only contact with the outside world was through the burner phone and a laptop she'd bought with cash. The news had moved on from her disappearance. James was playing the grieving husband less frequently, focusing on his business. Victoria was still by his side at public events, but Elizabeth could see the strain in her smile. Her mother was still at the facility. Marcus sent updates when he could, sedated but stable. James visited weekly, the devoted son-in-law. Sarah Mitchell was fighting the legal battle, but it was slow going. James's lawyers filed motion after motion, burying her in paperwork. Then, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, Elizabeth woke to the sound of tires on gravel. She moved quietly to the window. A black SUV sat in the driveway, engine running. Her heart hammered as she grabbed the go bag she kept by the bed. Cash, documents, one change of clothes. A knock at the door, polite but firm. Mrs. Sterling, we know you're in there. Your husband is worried about you. Not the police. Private security. Elizabeth didn't respond. She moved to the back door, ready to run into the woods. 8 months pregnant with twins, running was optimistic, but adrenaline was a powerful motivator. The front door exploded inward. 3 men entered, professional and efficient. Mrs. Sterling, we're here to help you. You need medical attention. Elizabeth ran. The woods were dark, branches tearing at her clothes. Behind her, flashlights swept through the trees. Her breathing was ragged, her body protesting every step. She fell hard, protecting her belly at the expense of her knees. Pain shot through her legs. Got her, yeah, a voice said. Hands pulled her up. Not roughly, but firmly. She was walked back to the cottage, where a 4th man waited. He had a medical bag. Mrs. Sterling, I'm Dr. Reeves. I'm here to evaluate your mental state. I don't consent to any evaluation. I'm afraid consent isn't required given the circumstances. He pulled out a syringe. You can't, I'm pregnant. It's just a mild sedative for your safety and the safety of your children. Elizabeth felt the needle pierce her skin. The world began to blur. The last thing she heard was one of the men on his phone. We have her. Heading to the facility now. Elizabeth woke to the sensation of floating. Her limbs felt disconnected from her body, her thoughts scattered like leaves in wind. The white ceiling above her seemed to pulse with her heartbeat, or maybe that was the medication making everything blur at the edges. She tried to lift her hand and found it restrained. Not harshly, the straps were padded, medical grade, designed for patient safety rather than imprisonment. But the effect was the same. She was trapped. The room came into focus slowly. Private medical facility, not a state hospital. The furniture was expensive, the monitoring equipment state-of-the-art. Even in prison, she was surrounded by James's wealth. The irony wasn't lost on her, though the sedatives made it hard to hold on to any emotion for long. A nurse entered, middle-aged, professionally pleasant, with eyes that never quite met Elizabeth's. Good morning, Mrs. Sterling. How are we feeling today? Where am I? Elizabeth's voice came out raspy, unused. Wellness Psychiatric Center, dear. Your husband had you brought here after you were found in distress. You've been here for 3 days. 3 days, Elizabeth tried to calculate what that meant. The divorce filing, the evidence she'd gathered, Marcus's investigation. What had happened to it all in 3 days? I need to speak to my lawyer. I'm afraid outside contact isn't permitted during the evaluation period. Doctor's orders, O'Shays. The nurse adjusted Elizabeth's IV, and Elizabeth noticed a second port had been added. This is just to keep you calm, dear, for the baby's safety. The baby's. Elizabeth's free hand went to her belly, feeling the familiar movement within. The twins were active, more active than usual. Were they sensing her distress? Were the medications affecting them? I need to know what medications you're giving me. I have the right to know. Dr. Reeves will discuss your treatment plan with you later. The nurse made notes on a tablet. Your husband will be visiting this afternoon. Perhaps you should rest until then. After the nurse left, Elizabeth tested her restraints. The one on her left hand was looser. She could almost slip free if she compressed her thumb. But there were cameras in the corners of the room, their red lights blinking steadily. Any escape attempt would be seen immediately. She forced herself to think through the fog. James had found her at the cottage. Victoria had betrayed her, or had she? The flash drive, the evidence of James's crimes, had it all been fake? Or was that what James wanted her to believe? The door opened again. This time it was Dr. Reeves, the man who had sedated her at the cottage. He pulled a chair close to her bed, his expression one of practiced concern. Elizabeth, may I call you Elizabeth? I want you to know you're safe here. Your husband is very concerned about you. My husband is trying to steal my children. Dr. Reeves made a note. These paranoid thoughts, how long have you been experiencing them? They're not paranoid if they're true. Elizabeth, your husband showed me the security footage from his office. You were hiding in the hallway spying on him during a business meeting. You fled your home without explanation. You've been living in isolation, exhibiting signs of severe paranoia and delusional thinking. I caught him with Victoria Chase. Ms. Chase has provided a sworn statement that you've been stalking her, making unfounded accusations. She's considering a restraining order. The lies were so smooth, so perfectly constructed. Elizabeth could see how anyone would believe them. The pregnant wife, hormonal and unstable, creating fantasies about her successful husband's infidelity. I want a different doctor. I want a second opinion. I'm afraid I'm the only psychiatrist on staff qualified to handle cases of pregnancy-related psychosis. But don't worry, we'll take excellent care of you. He stood to leave, then paused. Your husband mentioned you've been hiding money, trying to leave him. That must be very stressful, feeling like you need to run. We're going to help you understand that those feelings aren't based in reality. After he left, Elizabeth lay still, but her mind raced. She needed to play along, to make them think the medications were working. She needed to be the model patient until she could find a way out. The afternoon brought James as promised. He entered with a bouquet of roses, her favorite white ones, the same kind he'd brought to their first date. He was performing for someone, the nurses, the cameras, maybe just for his own sick satisfaction. Darling, he said, settling into the chair beside her bed. You look better, more rested. Elizabeth kept her expression neutral, slightly unfocused. Let him think the drugs were working. The doctors say you've been having episodes, paranoid delusions about me, about our marriage. He took her hand, and she forced herself not to pull away. I want you to know I forgive you. Once you're better, we can go home and forget all this happened. He leaned closer, and she smelled his cologne. Tom Ford Oud Wood, the same scent that used to make her feel safe. Now it made her nauseous. The girls at the office send their love, he continued. Victoria especially. She feels terrible that you misunderstood that meeting. She wants to visit, to explain, but the doctors think it might upset you. Elizabeth turned her head slightly, as if drowsy. The babies, she mumbled. Yes, our sons, James said louder, for the cameras. I can't wait to meet them. I've already picked out names, James Jr. and William, after my father. She wanted to scream that they were girls, that she'd seen them on the ultrasound just days ago, but that would show too much awareness, too much fight. Instead, she let her eyes drift closed. James stayed for an hour, talking about their future, about the nursery he was designing, about how much he loved her. It was a masterful performance. Anyone watching would see a devoted husband visiting his ill wife. When he finally prepared to leave, he kissed her forehead and whispered so quietly that no camera could pick it up. 2 more weeks, and this will all be over. Enjoy them. That night, the young nurse from before came in during shift change. As she checked Elizabeth's IV, she palmed something small into Elizabeth's hand. A phone, ancient by modern standards but functional. 2 minutes, she whispered. Then hide it in the mattress seam. Elizabeth waited until the nurse left, then quickly dialed Marcus's number from memory. Liz? His voice was urgent. Are you okay? I'm at Wellness Psychiatric. James has me on a psychiatric hold. I need help. We're working on it. The recordings from your bracelet before they disabled it. We have James discussing your disposal with his mother, but Judge Sterling is blocking our warrants. How long? A week, maybe two? Can you hold on that long? Elizabeth felt the baby's kick, strong and insistent. I don't have 2 weeks. The babies are coming soon, and once they're born, I know, we're going to get you out. Victoria is actually... The door handle turned. Elizabeth quickly shoved the phone into the mattress seam and closed her eyes, feigning sleep. Dr. Reeves entered with 2 orderlies. Midnight rounds, he announced. How are we feeling, Elizabeth? She kept her breathing even, didn't respond. Increase the Ativan, he told the nurse. She's still showing signs of resistance. As they adjusted her medication, Elizabeth felt the world growing fuzzy again. But deep in the mattress, the phone remained hidden. Her lifeline to the outside world. Her hope that this prison wouldn't become her tomb. The next days blurred together. Medication rounds that she learned to cheek and spit out when alone. Therapy sessions where she gradually pretended to accept Dr. Reeves's version of reality. Visits from James where she played the broken, subdued wife he wanted her to be. But at night, when the staff was minimal, she used the phone. Quick texts to Marcus. Brief calls to Sarah Mitchell. Building her case from inside her cage. On day 7, she felt the first real contraction. The pain started as a dull ache in Elizabeth's lower back, the kind she'd been feeling for weeks, but sharper, more insistent. She'd been timing them secretly, 20 minutes apart, then 15, then 10. The babies were coming, ready or not. She pressed the call button, and the night nurse appeared, not the young one who'd given her the phone, but an older woman with cold, efficient hands. I think I'm in labor, Elizabeth said, gripping the bed rails as another contraction hit. The nurse checked her briefly. You're dilated to 3 centimeters. I'll notify Dr. Reeves. I need a real obstetrician. These are twins, they're premature. Dr. Reeves will handle everything. Fear shot through Elizabeth sharper than any contraction. Dr. Reeves was a psychiatrist, not qualified to deliver babies. This was deliberate. They wanted something to go wrong. She waited until the nurse left, then frantically pulled out the hidden phone. Her fingers shook as she texted Marcus. In labor. They won't get proper doctor. Help. His response was immediate. Stall, we're coming. Stall? How did one stall labor? Dr. Reeves arrived within minutes, looking irritated at being woken. He examined her with clinical detachment. 5 centimeters, progressing quickly. He turned to the nurse. Prep the medical suite. We'll deliver here. I need a hospital, Elizabeth pleaded. These are twins, 36 weeks. They need a NICU. We have everything necessary here. You're in no condition to be moved. Another contraction hit, and Elizabeth screamed, partly from pain, partly from fury. She was about to give birth in a psychiatric facility with a psychiatrist attending, and it was all perfectly legal because James had orchestrated it. They moved her to a medical suite that was surprisingly well-equipped. Too well-equipped for a standard psychiatric facility. This had been planned, prepared for. How many other women had given birth here under similar circumstances? The nurse started an IV, and Elizabeth noticed her adding something to the port. What is that? Just something to help with the pain. I don't consent to any medication. Dr. Reeves sighed. Elizabeth, you're not in a position to make medical decisions right now. Your husband has medical power of attorney. As if summoned, James appeared in the doorway. He'd changed into surgical scrubs, playing the part of the concerned father-to-be. The sight of him in medical garb, pretending to be something sacred and protective, made Elizabeth's stomach turn. How's my brave girl? He asked, taking her hand. She wanted to pull away, but another contraction hit, and she found herself squeezing his hand instead, needing something solid to hold on to, even if it was him. That's it, he coached. Breathe through it. For a moment, it felt real. The concerned husband, the laboring wife. Then the contraction passed, and she saw his eyes. Cold, calculating, watching her like a specimen. The lawyer is here, he said quietly, pulling papers from his pocket. Just sign these and everything will be easier. Elizabeth looked at the papers through pain-blurred eyes. Custody agreements, giving James full custody, with Elizabeth having supervised visits at his discretion. Go to hell, she gasped. James's face darkened. Sign them or things get complicated. More complicated than giving birth in a psychiatric facility. He leaned close. I could have you declared incompetent right now. You'd never see them at all. This way you get visits. Another contraction. Elizabeth screamed, and in the chaos, she knocked the papers from his hand. They scattered across the floor, and James scrambled to collect them. That's when the young nurse appeared, the one who'd given her the phone. She moved efficiently, checking monitors, adjusting Elizabeth's position, and Elizabeth noticed her subtly palm something from the medical tray. Doctor, her blood pressure is elevated, the nurse announced. 160 over 110. We need to monitor for preeclampsia. Dr. Reeves looked uncertain. Preeclampsia was beyond his expertise. I can handle it, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. With respect, doctor, this requires an obstetrician. Hospital protocol for preeclampsia with twins is immediate transfer. This isn't a hospital, James snapped. No, a new voice said from the doorway, which is why this is now a crime scene. Marcus Webb stood there, FBI badge visible, backed by 6 agents. Behind them, Elizabeth could see Victoria Chase, but she looked different. Professional, wearing what looked like a federal badge of her own. James Sterling, you're under arrest, Marcus announced, moving into the room. James stepped back, his face cycling through emotions. Surprise, rage, calculation. You can't be here. This is a private medical facility. With a warrant, Marcus said, producing the document. Turns out holding a pregnant woman against her will and forcing her to give birth without proper medical care constitutes unlawful imprisonment and endangerment. She's under psychiatric hold. Based on falsified documents, Victoria stepped forward. I've been recording our conversations for 3 years, James. Every plan, every crime, including this one. Elizabeth gasped as another contraction hit, stronger than before. The nurse, who Elizabeth now realized might not be just a nurse, checked her again. 8 centimeters. These babies are coming now. We need to move her, Marcus said. There's no time, the nurse replied. She looked at Elizabeth. I'm actually a certified nurse midwife. Agent Sarah Anderson, FBI. I've been undercover here for 2 weeks. I can deliver your babies safely, but we need to do it now. Elizabeth laughed, or maybe cried. She couldn't tell anymore. Is anyone in this room who they claim to be? You are, Sarah Anderson said, preparing for the delivery. You're exactly who you claim to be, a woman trying to protect her children. Now let's bring them into the world safely. James tried to leave, but 2 agents blocked his path. You're staying, Marcus said. You wanted to be here for the birth of your children. Congratulations, you get your wish. What followed was controlled chaos. Sarah Anderson took charge of the medical aspect while FBI agents secured the room. Victoria stood in the corner, recording everything on her phone, evidence, she said, for the trials to come. James was forced to watch from the corner, handcuffed to a chair, as Elizabeth brought their daughters into the world. He saw her strength, her determination, her refusal to break even in the most vulnerable moment of her life. Twin A arrived at 3:14 p.m., screaming and perfect. It's a girl, Sarah Anderson announced, placing the baby on Elizabeth's chest. James's face fell. A girl, not the heir he'd planned for. Twin B came 12 minutes later, also a girl, also perfect. Congratulations, Sarah Anderson said. 2 healthy daughters. Elizabeth looked at James across the room, saw the devastation in his eyes. Not because he wouldn't get to know his daughters, but because they weren't sons. In his archaic worldview, he'd lost everything. Their names are Grace and Hope, Elizabeth announced, her voice strong despite her exhaustion. Grace Elizabeth Morrison and Hope Amanda Morrison. Morrison, James snarled. They're Sterlings. Actually, Victoria interrupted, they're not. The divorce papers Sarah Mitchell filed were approved this morning. Emergency judgment, given the circumstances. Elizabeth has full custody, and you have no parental rights pending the outcome of your criminal trial. Dr. Reeves tried to slip out during the commotion, but an agent stopped him. Dr. Harold Reeves, you're under arrest for conspiracy, false imprisonment, and practicing medicine outside your specialty, resulting in endangerment. As they read him his rights, he looked at James with pure hatred. You said this would be simple. You said your mother had handled everything. Speaking of which, Marcus said, pulling out his phone, Judge Helen Sterling was arrested 20 minutes ago. Turns out she's been fixing cases for years, not just for you, James. The room fell silent except for the soft cries of the newborns. Elizabeth held her daughters, exhausted but victorious. She'd given birth in the worst possible circumstances, but she'd survived. They'd survived. How? James asked, his voice broken. How did you... The bracelet, Elizabeth said. It never stopped recording. It was uploading to two servers, yours and the FBI's. Every word you said, every threat, every confession. You thought you were so clever, but you forgot one thing. What? I'm smarter than you ever gave me credit for. As the FBI led James away, he turned back one last time. This isn't over. I have resources you can't imagine. My lawyers are currently being arrested, Victoria finished. The whole Sterling empire is crumbling, James. While you were playing games with Elizabeth, the FBI was dismantling everything you built. They took him then, and Elizabeth had heard him shouting legal threats down the hallway until his voice faded entirely. Sarah Anderson, Agent Kim, helped Elizabeth get the twins properly swaddled. You did amazing, she said, and not many people could have stayed strong through that. I didn't have a choice, Elizabeth said, looking at Grace and Hope. They needed me to be strong. Marcus approached carefully. There's an ambulance waiting to take you to a real hospital. You and the girls need proper medical attention. Elizabeth nodded, then looked at Victoria. Why help me? Victoria's expression was complex. Guilt, determination, something else. Because I've been undercover for 3 years, investigating both James and my father. I was supposed to get close to James, find evidence of financial crimes. I never expected him to actually marry someone, to have children. When you showed up at the office that day, when I saw your face, I realized you were collateral damage in a war you didn't even know was happening. So the flash drive? Real evidence mixed with fake, designed to test what James would do. He failed the test spectacularly. His ego wouldn't let him believe you could outsmart him, so he revealed everything. Elizabeth was too tired to be angry. And now? Now you're free, Marcus said. James will likely get 20 to 30 years. His mother another 15 to 20. The Sterling Empire will be dissolved. The assets frozen pending investigation. Which means I have nothing, Elizabeth realized. You have them, Sarah Anderson said, nodding to the twins. And that's everything. As they prepared to move Elizabeth to the ambulance, she caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror. She looked destroyed, hair matted with sweat, face pale, eyes ringed with exhaustion. But there was something else there too. Triumph. She'd walked through hell and emerged on the other side. The facility's other patients watched from doorways as she was wheeled out, some of them probably there for legitimate reasons, others perhaps victims like her. She wondered how many women had been broken in these rooms, how many had lost their children to men like James. But not her, not today. As the ambulance drove away, Elizabeth held her daughters close and whispered promises to them. They would never know the fear she'd known. They would never doubt their worth. They would grow up strong and free and absolutely certain that they were loved. Behind them, the Wellness Psychiatric Center was being raided, years of false imprisonments and forced treatments finally coming to light. It would make headlines for weeks, the Sterling scandal exposing a network of corruption that reached into the highest levels of government and business. But Elizabeth wouldn't watch the news coverage. She had more important things to focus on: learning to breastfeed 2 babies, healing from the trauma, building a new life from nothing. The war was over. Now came the harder task: learning to live in peace. 6 months later, Elizabeth sat in a congressional hearing room, her twins and carriers beside her. She was testifying about financial corruption, the ways wealthy families manipulated the system, destroyed lives, operated above the law. Grace and Hope were peaceful, making soft baby noises that occasionally caused committee members to smile. Elizabeth spoke clearly, without notes, about everything she had witnessed, experienced, survived. Mrs. Morrison, the senator leading the hearing, said, using her maiden name at her request, "What would you say to other women trapped in similar situations?" Elizabeth looked directly at the cameras. Document everything, trust your instincts, and know that sometimes the only way out is through. The system isn't designed to protect you, but that doesn't mean you can't protect yourself. In the financial aspect, you went from considerable wealth to nothing and then to something better. I rebuilt my career. My consulting firm helps women navigate financial abuse in divorce proceedings. My daughters will grow up knowing their worth isn't tied to their bank account or their father's name. Speaking of their father, James Sterling was sentenced last week to 25 years. His mother received 15. Do you have any comment? I hope they use the time for reflection. After the hearing, Marcus waited in the hallway. He had become a constant in their lives, not quite romantic, but more than friendly. He handed her a coffee and took Hope's carrier so she could drink it. You did good in there. I told the truth. That's what I mean. They walked toward the exit, and Elizabeth noticed a package on a bench with her name on it. Marcus checked it, FBI habit, then handed it to her. Inside was a single key and a note. Your inheritance. A friend who knew your mother. Elizabeth looked at Marcus confused. He shrugged, but his eyes suggested he knew more than he was saying. A month later, Elizabeth stood in a Swiss bank, the key in her hand. The safety deposit box opened to reveal documents. A trust established by Helen Sterling 20 years ago. A trust in Elizabeth's maiden name, funded with $500 million. The bank manager explained, Judge Sterling established this for Amanda Sterling, her first daughter-in-law, using embezzled funds. When Amanda died, the trust should have been dissolved, but it seems someone kept it active, changing the beneficiary name to Elizabeth Morrison. The authorization was filed the day before Judge Sterling's arrest. Elizabeth stared at the papers. Helen Sterling, in her final act of freedom, had hidden away a fortune for the wife she claimed to despise. Why? A letter at the bottom of the box explained, Elizabeth, if you're reading this, my son has fallen and taken me with him. Good. I created him, this monster, and I deserve my fate. But you don't deserve yours. Neither did Amanda. I couldn't save her, but I can save you. This money is stolen, yes, but from men worse than my son. Use it better than we did. Tell your daughters their grandmother was a cautionary tale, not a role model. HS. The Berkshire cottage had been transformed. What was once a hideout was now a home. The walls were covered in children's artwork, Grace's careful butterflies and Hope's explosive finger paintings. The kitchen smelled of baking bread and coffee. Elizabeth stood at an easel on the porch, painting the morning light through the trees. Her consulting firm operated remotely, helping women escape financial abuse. She had 40 clients, 2 employees, and a waiting list. Mama, can we see Daddy today? Grace asked. She had James's sharp features, but Elizabeth's warm eyes. Daddy's still in his special building, Elizabeth said carefully. They had agreed to age-appropriate honesty. Remember, he made some bad choices and needs time to think about them. 20 more years of thinking, Hope added matter-of-factly. She was the pragmatist, even at 5. A car pulled up the drive. Marcus stepped out, carrying groceries and art supplies. He had moved to a house 10 minutes away 3 years ago. They weren't together, but they weren't apart. It was undefined, but comfortable. Uncle Marcus! The girls ran him, and he scooped them up, one in each arm. I brought those canvases you wanted, he told Elizabeth, and something else. From his jacket, he pulled out an envelope. Victoria wanted you to have this. Elizabeth opened it. Victoria Chase, now Victoria Matthews after a name change, had written from California where she ran a nonprofit for financial abuse survivors. Saw your testimony to the New York legislature. The Sterling law passed because of you. No more sunset clauses on prenups that leave women vulnerable. You did it. I'm getting married next month. A teacher, no money, all heart. You'd like him. Thank you for forgiving me for my part in it all. V. Elizabeth smiled. Forgiveness had been a journey, but holding on to anger was like holding on to fire. It only burned the one who clutched it. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Elizabeth and Marcus sat on the porch watching the sunset. Any regrets? Marcus asked. About James? No. About how long it took me to see the truth? Yes. You were 28 when you married him. You were looking for security. I was looking for someone else to define my worth, Elizabeth corrected. Now I know better. The girls will know better too. That's the plan. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. James Sterling had been attacked in prison, was in critical condition. His attacker was the brother of Amanda Sterling, his first wife. Elizabeth felt nothing, not satisfaction, not sympathy. James was a chapter in her story, but not the ending. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "I'm free," Elizabeth said. "I've been free for 5 years. This doesn't change anything." She went inside to check on the girls. They slept peacefully, unaware of their father's fate, protected by their mother's choice to break the cycle. 10 years after, Elizabeth stood in front of the Congressional Women's Caucus, her hair now streaked with premature silver, a badge of honor from her journey. The Sterling Law had been federal for 5 years, protecting millions of women from financial abuse in marriage. "Mrs. Morrison, your story has inspired legislation, books, a documentary. What's next?" "Raising my daughters to be strong, independent women who know their worth isn't negotiable." And James Sterling? He survived the prison attack but is paralyzed. He'll never walk free again, literally or figuratively. I don't think about him anymore. The Sterling fortune? In trust for abuse survivors. Every penny is being used to fund shelters, legal aid, and recovery programs. It's the only good to come from that money. After the interview, Elizabeth walked through Central Park, past Bethesda Fountain where Victoria had given her the flash drive that saved her life, even if it was also bait. Her phone rang. Grace, now 15, calling from boarding school. "Mom, I got into the Young Entrepreneurs Program." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Hope says it's just because of our name. You know, being in the documentary and all. Tell Hope that our name, Morrison, means something because we made it mean something. Not because of who we married or who our father was, but because of what we survived and how we chose to help others." "I will. Love you, Mom." "Love you too." Elizabeth continued walking, a woman who had lost everything and found herself. The city pulsed around her, full of stories like hers. Women trapped in golden cages, not knowing the door had been open all along. They just had to be brave enough to walk through it, even if it meant walking through fire first. As she reached the edge of the park, she saw a young pregnant woman crying on a bench, designer bags around her, wedding ring glinting in the afternoon sun. Elizabeth sat down beside her. "Bad day?" she asked gently. The woman looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. "My husband, I just found out." "That he's not who you thought he was?" The woman nodded, surprised at the understanding. Elizabeth handed her a business card. "Morrison Consulting. We help women in your situation. First consultation is free." "Why would you?" "Because 10 years ago, I was you, and someone helped me. Now it's my turn." The woman took the card with shaking hands. Elizabeth stood to leave, then turned back. "What's your name?" "Amanda," the woman whispered. "Amanda Chase." Elizabeth felt the universe shift, patterns repeating, chances for redemption appearing. "Well, Amanda, you're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be free." As she walked away, Elizabeth thought about cycles, how they repeated until someone was brave enough to break them. She had broken hers. Now she helped others break theirs. Behind her, Amanda Chase stared at the business card, then pulled out her phone. The first step was always the hardest, but it was also the most important. The city continued its endless rhythm, but for two women in Central Park, the world had just changed forever. One had found her freedom years ago. The other was just beginning her journey. And somewhere in federal prison, James Sterling sat in his wheelchair, watching the news coverage of the Sterling Law's latest expansion, powerless to stop the legacy Elizabeth had built from the ashes of his empire. Justice, Elizabeth had learned, wasn't always swift, but when it came, it was complete. The twins would never know their father as anything but a cautionary tale. But they would know their mother as the woman who refused to be a victim, who transformed trauma into triumph, who taught them that the greatest inheritance wasn't money, it was courage. And that was worth more than all the Sterling millions combined.